Hey guys, welcome. Want to make sure everything is working properly, so hopefully you can see me and hear me. It sounds like Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets or whatever, right? So let me make sure I got this. I'm going to say, can you hear me? And make sure that we are up and running. You know, every time it's up and running and it works fine, but the one time I don't check is the one time that it's not going to be working. So we'll see who's with us. All right, Madison. Yep. Fantastic. Okay. So, yeah, Mariana. All right. Perfect. And NNNNN says yes. Good deal. Okay, then let's go ahead and get started. So, Waleed, fantastic. So, wow, do we have another big one, right? Much like last week, we're going over two modules today, Module 5 and Module 6. And that means that we're going to be looking at the economic revolution, Protestant work ethic, democracy science, industrial revolution, so on and so forth. I want to remind you of something. This is not a history class. Nick, fantastic. Remember, we are looking at today through the lens of yesterday. And trust me when I say this lecture is really going to do that in spades. All of them are going to be highly relevant, but wow, when we get to the Protestant work ethic, the Protestant ethic, oh my gosh, yeah, okay. I maintain that a lot of our worldviews today about the economy and work and so on and so forth stems from this bad boy. So, Ahmad, fantastic. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Oh, by the way, later on, I'm going to try something new. We're going to do a Kahoot quiz. Kahoot quizzes, but I've never done them remotely before. So do me a favor, have your phone available or another screen in another browser. You can go to kahoot.it, and in a moment, I'll give you a code that you can put in. It'll be for the Protestant ethic lecture. And we're going to try to do a little quiz from that. All right? Okay. Then we're going to get started. So let's talk economic revolution. All right? This one it's really fascinating. Here's a bit from the reading. The market system with its essential components of land, labor, and capital was born in agony. An agony that began in the 13th century and did not run its course until well into the 19th. And I maintain it's not over. This agony that we are going to learn about from here on out is going to sound very, very familiar to you. Okay? So I want to kind of set that headspace as we move into this. Okay. Now, just to kind of remind ourselves where we are in this whole, journey of ours, right? Remember, we've talked about trade and barter. We've talked about divisions of labor. We talked about Aristotle and Plato and how they felt about division of labor and retail. We talked about trusts and global enterprises with the Vikings, and we talked about the clash between business and religion, because remember, back in that day, religion ruled everything. Religion was everything. And so business was kind of seen as something encroaching upon religion, because it set values in different places. People turned their attention toward the developing of an accumulation of riches versus the accumulation of treasures in heaven. They became greedy and so forth. And this really disturbed religion. So as I said before in a previous lecture, we really had business going on in spite of religion. Religion would have just assumed that things remained static. Business was going on anyway. Business in spite of religion. Well, something really weird is about to happen today that we're going to see. We are going to see a seismic shift. We are going to see business because of religion. We're going to see this in the philosophy of gain of the profit motive, which we'll go on to here. And we're going to see this in the Protestant work ethic. It is really interesting how philosophy was able to kind of, take this thing called business that seemed to be counter to religious values and turn it into something that was consistent with religious values. So it's kind of cool. We're going to explore that here to start with. Okay, let's do that. Now, here's the thing. If we were in a lecture class, I have this kind of geeky little, object lesson. There's the word I'm looking for. Object lesson. I said, listen, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's not. It's raining, but I like that because it waters my yard. Anyway, I say, I want everybody to pay me $1 for the sunlight. Now, here's the thing. I have never had anybody ever pay me $1 for the sunlight. Ever. And I've done this for a few semesters now. Now, you can well imagine why they don't pay $1. Let me go ahead and make some assumptions. You figure the sunlight is free. It's available to everybody. It's just part of the environment. You don't pay for something that's part of the environment. I certainly don't own the sunlight. And so where do I get off saying that I can charge for sunlight? Well, by the end of this lecture, you're going to see we totally can charge for sunlight. All right? So bear with me. All right. This is from the reading. We're going to go over the reading a lot today. As per usual, you pay attention, you participate, you take notes, you take that as you go in and scan the reading. You're totally hooked up. Okay. So let's read this. The whole world until the 16th or 17th centuries could not envision the market system for thoroughly sound reason that land, labor, and capital, the basic agents of production, which the market system allocates, did not yet exist. Okay, you heard that properly. Land, labor, and capital did not exist. Now you're going to be like, what the hell? Of course they existed. Let's keep reading. Land, labor, and capital in the sense of soil, human beings, and tools are of course coexistent with society itself. But the idea of abstract land and abstract labor did not immediately suggest itself to the human mind, more than did the idea of abstract energy or matter. Land, labor, and capital as agents of production, as impersonal, dehumanized economic entities, are as much modern conceptions as the calculus. Okay, let's talk about what we mean by abstract, okay? Because land certainly existed, but not abstract land. Labor existed, but not abstract labor. Let's explore this idea of abstract. And to do that, I want you to answer this question. What makes a chair a chair? I'm dead serious about this, okay? I want you to play with the idea. Put something in here, right? So I'm going to come over to our little pause screen, and I want you to think about what makes a chair, okay? So here we go. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see what makes a chair a chair. All right, so Nick says a chair is typically an object you can sit on that is oftentimes movable. I like that. An object that you can sit on and is movable. Okay. Well, you can move a log, right? You can sit on a log and you can move a log. You can sit on a rock. You can move a rock if you have some folks to help you. And yet, I don't know that we would call a log or a rock a chair. You can sit on a table and move a table. You can sit in a beanbag chair, and a beanbag chair? That's interesting, right? Let's keep going. By the way, I'm going to screw with all your answers, and don't worry, you're all right. Okay, so Mariana, it's something you sit on but can also support your back. Okay, very interesting, right? So this differentiates a chair from a stool. All right, a stool doesn't support your back, whereas the idea that, something supports your back, a beanbag chair, right? A couch. What's the difference between a couch and a chair? And yet a car seat. A car seat, is that a chair? Why don't we call it a car chair? Okay? Don't worry. The whole point of this is to discuss abstract. Okay. Object you sit in, something you sit on. Well, we've already said I can sit on my dog. All right. I can sit on my kid. My kid's not a chair. Let's see, something that has 4 legs that you can sit on that's not a table. Okay, I like this one. 4 legs. Here's the thing, though. Take a look at chairs that are at school and at the workplace, and many of them have 5 legs, right? If it's a rolling chair, because 5 is actually more stable than 4. And so for safety reasons, a lot of companies are switching to 5. And yet you could do a 3-legged chair, right? Object created with the objective of being sat on. Actually, Nick is pretty darn close with some researchers. And yes, I did say researchers. You'll see this in a second. Nick is pretty darn close with what some researchers have said, which is really the objective of being sat in. Okay? Something that you're able to sit on and rest. I like that. Something used for sitting, something you can sit on. Very good. Okay? Now, here's the point, guys. I know this sounds frickin' ridiculous, but there are whole papers written on what makes a chair a chair. Okay? And just to kind of tie it in with what Nick said earlier with the objective, I'm not going to read the whole conclusion of this particular research paper, but it says objects are usually made for some purpose. And Nick, as you pointed out, objective of being sat in. Hence, the functionality often is the most obvious common denomination for a member of an object class. We have proposed affordance detector, meaning can you detect what it is used for by perceiving it? When functionality is handled by a cue complementary with appearance. Does it look like something that can be sat in, right? Now it goes on and on and on. Here's the point. Let's define abstract. Existing in thought as an idea, but not having any physical or concrete existence. Here's the idea. You can conceive of a chair that does not exist. You can do it, okay? You can conceive of a perfectly round circle, which does not exist. Every circle in nature has imperfections, contusions, whatever, bumps, I don't know, whatever. But you can conceive of these things. You can conceive of a chair which does not exist. You can conceive of things that are not in existence, and yet you know what they are. Okay, this means abstract. Now, I know this is getting weird, but bear with me. This is really important. Okay, um, so abstract land. Now, you and I get land, right? It's something you put a chair on. There's an answer for us. A chair is something that you put on land. Anyway, now you can put them on the sea. Abstract land. Remember, land, not the soil and dirt, but something else. Okay, this is from the reading. Take, for example, land. As late as the 14th or 15th century, there was no land, at least in the modern sense of freely saleable, rent-producing property. Freely saleable, rent-producing property did not exist. We didn't even conceive of it. There were lands, of course, estates, manors, and principalities, but these were emphatically not real estate to be bought and sold as occasion warranted. In fact, land was like sunlight, guys. It's a naturally occurring thing. You've got sunlight, you've got water, you've got air. You use these things to live, right? And so the vast majority of the world was just common land. Common land. Nobody owned it, everybody owned it, and we just farmed it. Common land. By the way, we still have common lands here, public lands. Here in the state of Utah, I think like Montana is majority public lands. You'd be surprised what you're allowed to do on public lands. But the point is, common land. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I mentioned sunlight earlier. You can totally buy and sell sunlight. Sunlight is a commodity today. Well, what can you do with sunlight? You can create energy with sunlight. So if I have solar panels on my roof and somebody else builds a building that blocks the sunlight from my solar panels, they have taken from me a commodity, energy, power, right? In fact, in many cases, and these are, of course, articles, sunlight is considered a healthy, necessary element in order for us to be healthy. Therefore, buildings cannot be built that would block it. Have you ever wondered why your fence in your backyard is 6 feet? It's not 7 feet or 8 feet or 9 feet. It's not 14 feet. Because everybody has a right to sunlight, and anything over 6 feet, we've just kind of decided would block too much sunlight, right? Same thing goes with airflow. These fences are meant to encourage airflow, not discourage it. A view from your home. If you have a gorgeous view from your home, that's actually part of the value of your home. And if that view is blocked or obstructed in some way, the value of your home degrades. So you see, even something as universally, available like light and air and water and land and views can become a commodity. That's what we mean by abstract. Okay, now, this was a new idea. Just as in at the very beginning of this lecture, the idea that I would charge you for sunlight, you thought was kind of a lame little object lesson. But now you see, yes, you are charged for sunlight. And you can be. So let's keep going. All right, so now we're getting this idea of land as, hey, I can frickin' make money with land. Well, people started to figure out they can make money with land. So they started to enclose common land. Now remember, common land is land that anybody can use in any way. It's just there. Common air, common sunlight, common land. So families have been farming this land for generations and generations and generations. Well, let's see what happened. This is from the reading. Wool became a new profitable commodity, and wool demands grazing pastures for the wool producers. The pastures made by enclosing the land. Somebody came along one day and said, you see that land? I'm going to build a fence around it. Nobody owns it. Build a fence around it. This picture, by the way, this is from a movie called Open Range with Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall. It's open range. It's about these guys who are used to running their cattle all across the United States with no impediments, and somebody puts up a fence because of wool farming, wool ranching. And hijinks ensue. Hijinks involving guns, of course. The patchwork, crazy quilt of small scattered holdings, unfenced and recognizable only by a tree here and a rock there and so forth. The common lands on which all might graze their cattle or gather peat are suddenly declared to be all the property of the lord of the manor and no longer available for the whole parish, for everybody. Okay? No longer available. Some dude, and yeah, it's always a dude, okay, who has some level of power and wealth and influence, just shows up and says, I own this. Get off. This is freaking mind-blowing at the time. Just as it would be mind-blowing if every time you went on campus, I said, give me $1 for the sunlight. I own all the sunlight on this campus. It's mine. You owe me. That is just as preposterous as it was to these folks, but that's what happened. Okay, so this had an effect, as you can well imagine. But it was not merely the wholesale land grabbing that warrants attention. The tragedy is what happened to the peasant, okay? Deprived of the right to use common land, he would no longer maintain himself as a farmer. Since no factories were available, he could not, even if he had wanted to, metamorphose into a factory worker. Instead, he became the most miserable of all social classes, an agricultural proletarian. And where agriculture work was lacking, a beggar, sometimes a robber, or usually a pauper. Okay, what does that mean in plain English? It means, listen, for generations and generations, I've been farming this land. It's just common land. And now all of a sudden, this dorkwad shows up, puts a fence around it, and says it's mine. And he says, you have two choices. You can either work for me and continue to farm it and give me 80% of the profits. Or, actually, you know what? I don't need your labor. Take off. Leave. Well, where else is he going to go? Well, he might go to another piece of land and try it, but the same thing's going to happen. All of a sudden, word gets out that you can start fencing off this crap and start making money off of it. And before you know it, these folks are, at best, farmers who farm for somebody else, right? The agricultural proletarian, or they become the poverty class. And this is that conflict that I started out with. This market system is born in agony. This is when the agony starts. Okay. All right. Now let's talk abstract labor. All right. Now, obviously, people have been working for centuries and centuries and centuries, so it's not like labor is anything new. But it is. I'll show you what I mean. Okay. In the old days, there were basically two ways that you got work done. All right? And these two ways were really used. I mean, they were the foundation of a nation's economy. Group 1, Group 2, foundation of a nation's economy. First, custom. All right? Tradition from generation to generation. So, for example, my last name, Schiffbauer, in German means shipbuilder. Well, 3 guesses what my ancestors did. So many families just simply did the same thing generation after generation because it's tradition, it's custom. And in fact, you would be named after it. So I'm Schiffbauer, which means shipbuilder. You probably know a tanner. Well, they tan hides and so forth. Have you ever wondered why there are so many frickin' smiths? Smith? Because there's blacksmith, there's metalsmith, there's this smith, there's that smith. And it means every community needs a smith. Ergo, the name Smith is all over the place. What kind of ships did they make? They made the best damn ships in Germany. That's what they made. I don't know. I have no idea. Actually, if you go back and look at my genealogy, my family actually was along the Rhine River. So they wouldn't be sea-going ships. They would be river-going ships. So that is one way that you got labor done. The same thing done generation after generation after generation. Well, there's another way we got labor done, and this was command, all right? We're talking strong-arm tactics, subjugating people under the whip, slavery, caste systems, okay? Massive nations and empires were built off of slavery. We all know this, including our own nation, built off of slavery. That's one of the big things that's really wrangling us right now, really kind of tearing us up, because we need to recognize that the greatest nation, the greatest nation on earth. I have a hard time saying that with a straight face these days, I have to admit. We're a pretty darn good, strong, awesome nation on earth. But it was built on slavery. It really was. When you look at the economics of the North and the South from the beginning on, oh my gosh. And so, we forced labor that way. All right. So this is the way that many, many, many nations did work. It was either because of tradition or, the custom or command, slavery, forced labor, indentured servitude, caste systems, things like that. And we were all fine with it. We're all fine. It works great. No. Now the market system comes into place. Remember, born in agony? The market system says, hey, you know what? You should be able to do whatever you want to do for your own advantage. You want to work on a farm, work on a farm. You want to work in a factory, work in a factory. You want to work in an office, work in an office. You want to work in as a fisherman, work as a fisherman. You can do whatever you want. Whatever you want. And we'll pay you for it. Now, to you folks, this is obvious. This is standard. This is status quo. To them, this was freaking revolutionary and, quite frankly, terrifying. And we're going to talk about why it was terrifying. Okay? So let's play with that. Here was the terrifying part. All right? This is from the reading. It was this paradoxical, subtle, and difficult solution to the problem of survival that called forth the economist. For unlike the simplicity of custom, Schiffbauer makes ships, and command, hey, I'm stronger than you, do what I say. It was not at all obvious that each man out only for his own gain, it was not at all obvious that with each man out for his own gain, society could in fact endure. In other words, if you're just doing whatever you want to do because you can do what you want to do, how do we know society will endure? It was by no means clear that all the jobs of society, the dirty ones as well as the plush ones, would be done if custom and command no longer ran the world. This was frightening to them. Okay? So here, just to put it another way, If I can't count on a blacksmith to be a blacksmith because his name is Smith, or if I can't count on subjugated labor and indentured servitude and slavery to get done the crap jobs, who's going to do the crap jobs? If everybody has their own option, who's going to do it? This is real, okay? Now, just so you know, that question, would society survive? That's a legitimate question, okay? Now again, this is all, from the reading. This, and I'll post the PowerPoint slides like I did last time, because this little report is awesome. I'll tell you about it in a moment, but it really shows a modern example of this. Society's existence hangs by a hair, all right? Meaning it could fall apart at any point for any reason. And I think in our current, society situation, you guys understand that. Society is a fragile thing. Check out this if we start at the yellow. If any of 1,000 intertwined tasks of society should fail to get done, industrial life would soon become hopelessly disorganized. Every day, the community faces the possibility of breakdown, not from forces of nature, but from sheer human unpredictability. Now, this report, and it's really cool. Lebanon calls for more protests as police push back demonstrators. All right, now this was in 2015, and I'm not making this up. This toppled the government. You want to know what started it? No trash collection. No trash collection. Trash collection ceased for any number of reasons, corruption and strikes, and the system just fell apart. People wouldn't collect the trash. Trash was so bad in Lebanon that people protested. And as people protest, people riot. And out in Lebanon, when people were rioting, they got severe, which means things got really, really, really bad. It created an entire national revolution because of garbage collection. So who's going to collect the garbage if it's not custom, your last name is Garbage, or by force? Well, the answer, according to, capitalism, economics, which we're exploring in this, is the profit motive. Okay, and we're going to explore this in some depth through the next few weeks. Profit motive is a moral concept that personal gain is good. The idea that each man not only may, but should constantly strive to better his material lot. Constantly strive to better his material lot. Now, this section here is from the reading. The profit motive, as we know it, is only as old as modern man. Even today, the notion of gain for gain's sake is foreign to a large portion of the world's population. So let me explain what that's saying. And one of the questions that you'll have to answer is whether or not you agree with that. What it is asserting is that the idea of constantly striving to better our material lot is a foreign idea, and one that has only been introduced with modern economics, and that there are plenty of societies and plenty of peoples and plenty of nations that have not really had a need for the profit motive. They've just been kind of going along swimmingly, no problem, no need to constantly strive to better their material lot. I'm totally happy as I am. This assertion suggests that this is an invention, that this is something that has been brought about by modern economics. You tell me what you think on that. I kind of look at it both ways. Yes, I do see that there are cases where maybe profit motive wasn't really that huge, but I kind of think there's something deep inside of us as people that tells us you need to move forward, you need to progress, you need to expand, you need to explore, you need to thrive. And that is related to the profit motive. That's my own personal take. I'll be curious to hear yours. But here's the key thing. Bettering our material lot, our material circumstance, right? Constantly. Remember this. The profit motive tells us it's never enough. It's never enough. You're never earning enough. I'll tell you something, and this comes from a half a century being on this earth. There's this weird, darn funky thing that happens. There's this amount that you're earning, but the amount that you're living at. In other words, we always live slightly. I can't do charts very well with my hands on this, right? I need to make one. We are always living slightly beyond our means. Therefore, we are always looking for raises. We are always looking for new opportunities. We are always looking for additional revenue, income, what have you, because we always are living beyond our means. And the funny thing is, once we get that additional revenue or income, we increase our standard of living yet again. We're always living beyond our means. We're always trying for something more. So Nick says, caveman mind. I need better shelter, better weapons, and better everything. Yeah, totally, right? I mean, you guys get it. I want a better computer. I want a better car. I want better clothes. I want a better phone. You know, the phone you had, 3 years ago was just fine. Why'd you replace it? Because this one does the dishes or something, right? That's the profit motive. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So this, though, means, remember, profit motive says, hey, going for constant gain, increasing your material lot. Well, remember, that kind of flies in the face of religion. So it becomes a new philosophy that we are allowed to bring in. And yes, Madison, it is totally going to bring in the advancement of technology. It's like you did the reading. It's coming. Very good. Okay, so let's talk about philosophy of personal gain. So how did this philosophy of personal gain come into play? And again, we're going to look at today through the lens of yesterday. First, one thing the reading says is, first, there was gradual emergence of national political units in Europe. Oh my holy hell, that sounds like a history class. Let me tell you what this means. It means, listen, there's now these nations developing, whereas before we were just kind of this loose conglomerate of people and some tribes and fiefdoms and so on and so forth. We're starting to develop nations and states and so forth. And what do nations and states want? Well, they want what nations and states want today. They want influence, power, prosperity for their people. Now, these little, I need to get some new ones, right? States today are constantly fighting for which businesses can we attract, right? Can we attract Amazon as it builds a new headquarters? We have the inland port going on over by the airport, for ill or for good, right? States are always competing with other states for, business and opportunity because they want prosperity for their people, because people who live prosperously, they have peace and they pay taxes and they're able to afford services and so forth. You want prosperity for your family. Your city wants prosperity. Your county wants it. Your state wants it. Your nation wants it. Okay? So as we start to get this formation of states and nations and so on and so forth, they want prosperity just like everyone else. And so this idea of personal gain starts to become attractive. By the way, I'll give you an example that's meaningful to me. And I mean this in all earnestness. I have a vested interest in your economic future. I want you to be successful in the future. Why? Because in 15 years, you will be at your peak earning. Okay? You will be at your peak earning in 15 or so years. Well, in 15 or so years, I am going to retire. Well, if I retire in a state where people are economically prosperous, where the state is at peace, where we're doing great things, where we're providing great services, where we have equality, and where we're meeting the needs of everyone, that is a fan-freaking-tastic place for me to retire, and my money and my retirement funds will be solid and secure, and I'll be surrounded by happy, prosperous people, you guys. So, yeah, it is in my best interest that you are financially prosperous. And that's what these nations were going through, and we still go through today. Okay, that's number one. Number two, emergence of philosophy of number two, okay. A second great current of change was to be found in the slow decay of the religious spirit under the impact of skeptical, inquiring, humanist views of the Italian Revolution. Okay, so what does this mean? It means the not revolution, Renaissance. The Renaissance comes along. You know about the Renaissance. It's where we start to question things. You know, all this time throughout history, the church has told us what to think. The mosque has told us what to think. The synagogue has told us what to think. All of our various religious institutions have told us what to think. And the Renaissance comes along and people start to go, really? And we start to question things. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes when you question it, you say, yep. That makes sense. So I have it over here. Oh, yeah. Okay. One of the books I have for, my theology studies, it's a great quote. This book is called Faith Seeking Understanding, which is a quote from a saint. Well, the idea of faith seeking understanding is, hey, I totally have faith. I believe in my religion. I believe in my mosque, my synagogue, my church. I just want to understand better, so I'm going to ask questions. But sometimes when we ask questions, we find that the answers that have been given to us throughout our lives are not satisfactory. And we start to question, why is it wrong for me to want to better my material lot? I mean, yes, I want to develop and treasures in heaven, but does that mean I absolutely have to live in poverty today? I don't know that that's what that means. So we start to see this philosophy coming in and affecting us economically. By the way, this still goes on today. I'm going to give you some examples. Okay. Still another deep current lies in the slow social changes that eventually made the market system possible. All right, what does this mean? Slow social changes. Well, here's the thing. One of the reasons why shipbowers were shipbuilders is because we weren't terribly mobile. We had entire generations of people who lived and worked and died in the same 10 square miles. Lived, worked, died in the same 10 square miles. And they did the same work that everybody else in their family did. There was no change socially, right? So do me a favor. Let me know, does anybody here have a great grandparent or a great aunt or uncle who has never left the state of Utah? Okay? Never left the state of Utah, or if you're from somewhere else, they've never left their own state. So I'd really like to see that if that comes up there. Now, the reason I ask is most of you are going to say, no. My grandparents or great aunts and uncles, they've been out of the state of Utah plenty of times. Well, I got news for you. If I had asked this 25 years ago, the vast majority of great-great-grandparents, they never left Utah. Many never leave the city that they grew up in, right? We just kind of stay there. Well, economic advances make market changes allowable. I don't have to be a shipbuilder just because my dad was a shipbuilder. I don't have to stay in Germany just because my family is from Germany. I don't need to be a part of this religion just because my family was a part of this religion. This is new. Now, admit it, guys, even today, it's hard to break away from family tradition. Is that fair? I mean, when you start to believe things differently than your parents in terms of religion or politics or social order and conventions and so forth, it's kind of hard to break away. Or when your parents say, I want you to be a doctor, and you say, I want to be an artist. Well, at least today we have the option philosophically. Back then, the option wasn't even there. Okay, number 4. Perhaps most important of all the pervasiveness of its effects was the rise in scientific curiosity. Madison, yours is coming up now. The pre-capitalist era saw the birth of printing press and paper mill and windmill and the mechanical clock, map, and a host of other inventions. The idea of invention itself took hold. Experimentation and innovation were looked on for the first time with a friendly eye. Yeah, invention wasn't even really that big of a thing before this, but now gain is coming through invention. And what we're going to see in today's lecture is that as more invention and efficiency and economies of scale are entered in, standards of living go way up, and it's all because of this. Okay. All right. Last one, abstract capital. Remember, we talked abstract land, and then we just talked about abstract labor. You can choose what you want to do. Now, abstract capital. All right. Here's the thing, and I'm not going to read through all this one, but here's what it comes down to, guys, is sure, there were people who were rich, lords, dukes, duchesses, folks like that, but they did not invest their money. Back then, everything was about safety, securing your money, keeping your money, maintaining your money, keeping your money and your fiefdoms and your lands and so on and so forth intact. The idea that money was something that could be invested to make more money was a very strange thing. But that's what capital is. One of the tragedies that we need to fix, well, we're going to talk about more in this class as we go forward, but I'm going to let you in on a secret. It takes money to make money. Now, you already know that, but I want you to really think about it. People who are able to invest large sums of money make large sums of money. And this is how the rich get richer over and over and over and over, because they have the money to invest. Whereas you and I, now I'm not calling for an uprising or anything, but I'm simply saying you and I don't really have money to invest. So now the way we make money is by working and, developing our skills, going to college, developing skills, right? And then we work and we make money and so forth so we can, provide a living for our families. But the uber rich, their job is making money by investing money. Okay? And so this is where this problem starts to come into play. More about that as we go forward. Okay. Here's a quote by I have no idea who. I don't know how to pronounce that. But I like this. Names are cages. Naming something limits its definition and pigeonholes its functions. Okay? That's a very abstract idea. The idea is the moment we put a title or name to something like a chair, we have limited what it can be. A chair can be any number of things. It can be a stool. It can be a source of fuel. It can be a weapon. It can be who knows what. No, I'm not into WWF, but you see what I mean. Okay. All right, breather, because that was our first reading. Now we're going to do the second reading. And to do this one, I want to do that Kahoot quiz. So what I'm going to do here, folks, is I'm going to play this one. Classic. And go ahead and go to kahoot.it. Can I turn off the music? Let's just turn down the volume. Okay, go to kahoot.it. And put in this code right here, and let's see what Nick says. In Chile, they encourage entrepreneurship by giving people the equivalent of 900,000 US dollars to help them start a business. I think, yes, and we're going to talk about that. Absolutely. Access to capital. Access to capital. Access to capital is everything. All right. And we're going to explore that in this class. Thank you for sharing that, Nick. Okay, we got Maddie, Brock, Nick, and, you can put anything you want in there. Emmy. We'll go ahead and get a few more folks in there. Oh, you don't hear the desktop audio. That's right. If I did this, you would hear it. Okay, enough of that. All right, so we got Kaylee, Emmy, Nick, Mitch, Maddie, Brock. Give one more moment for folks to get on. Go ahead and go to kahoot.it, put in this code, and then we will start. Now, these are surveys, by the way. They're not questions, they're surveys, and your responses are 100% anonymous. No one will see, including me, who answered what. So just bear that in mind. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started then. Looks like, oh, here we go. Fantastic. Okay, now we're getting folks. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's start our quiz. So, 3 questions. Should every able-bodied person be required to work in some way in order to earn their living? Okay, now there's probably a delay going on. And so if you were not able to put in your response, that's probably why I need to calculate for that when I do this. But I do want to point out 100% of you said that you feel that every able-bodied person should be required to work in some way or another for their living. You believe that, I contend, because of the Protestant work ethic. And that's what we're talking about today, because the Protestant work ethic has taught us this through and through. Okay, let's do the next one. If you want to establish a successful career, how many hours a week do you think you'll have to work? How many hours a week? I can hear the music, so that's why I'm jigging and jiving. Yeah, I need to fix that delay. Okay, 40 hours, all right? Now, 40 hours is what, is considered a standard work week. Why is 40 hours the standard work week? Why didn't any of you say 30? Why didn't you say 50 or 60? Why is 40 considered that standard? We're going to explore that. Okay, next. How many hours a day spent on social media and games do you consider acceptable? Okay, it's really clear to me that I need to account for the delay. Okay, so the delay is not allowing you all to answer. This is my first time doing Kahoot in a remote setting, so I'll my first experiment. I will account for the delay going forward. Let's take a look at it though. We have some folks say, well, 2 hours a day is acceptable. Day on social TV, things like that is acceptable. Yeah, you know what? By the way, I expect that if everybody had had a chance to respond, it would have been somewhere in here. Once again, the Protestant work ethic is going to help us understand why this is. Okay. Yeah, Nick, it totally depends on the day. Yeah, dang straight. Okay. So I'm going to reduce this down. We'll pull this back up. And depends on the situation. Totally agree. Okay, now let's explore this. Okay, let's see if it's catching up at all. Nope. Okay, let me know if it is buffering again for us, if it's working okay. I'm going to type it in here just to be sure. Is it working now? Okay. So that you know, I think what it was is that since I was doing that Kahoot thing, it screwed up my buffering. And so, good lesson. I can't do Kahoot. I'll need to find other ways to make it work. So I'm glad we're at least back up. Thank you, everyone, for being patient with this. Okay, so what Max Weber observed with Calvinists here is this. He said, okay, Calvinists believed that in predestination, the only way to get into heaven was you were predestined to go to heaven. But of course, if you're predestined to go to heaven, the obvious question is, well, am I one of the people who's predestined to go to heaven? Yeah, good point, Nick. I could do it on a different device. I'll remember that. Good point. So they would say, well, if I am living a good life and I am blessed and things are going well, and I'm a good person, that means I'm going to go to heaven. And they had some particular rules about, well, what does it mean to be blessed and to be living a good life and so forth. And so we're going to look at these. And this is when we start to see religion and business coming together. So with that, first of all, waste of time is thus the first and in principle the deadliest of sins. The span of human life is inherently short and precious to make sure of one's own election, whether or not you get to go to heaven. Loss of time through sociability, idle talk, luxury, even more sleep than is necessary for health, 6 to at most 8 hours, is worthy of absolute moral condemnation. Okay, so here's the point. Because you only have limited time on this earth, and you'd better use that time well to make sure you are one of those people going to heaven, you are not to waste any of that time. So when I asked earlier, how much time do you think is appropriate to spend on the internet and watching movies and TV. And of course, depending on the day and situation, as you guys pointed out, you said 2-4 hours, something like that. The reason you said that is because in our, in the Western society, which practices the Puritan work ethic, we really loathe the wasting of time. Think about when you were sitting around on the couch and your grandparents would come visit, and your grandparents would look at you and say, "It's a beautiful day out there. Why aren't you doing something with your life? Go out, do something, play." It's this constant idea that you're wasting time. Okay? So, time and not being lazy, that's the first principle. All right, next one. The Quaker ethic, that's who we're talking about here, also holds that a man's life in his calling is an exercise in ascetic value, a proof of his state of grace through his conscientiousness, which is expressed in the care and method with which he pursues his calling. Okay, let's first explain that. Here's the idea. God has already figured out who and what you are. The work that you do, all work is holy. All work is decreed by God. God has decided that this is the work that you will do, and you need to do it in a way that shows that you recognize that this is your holy calling from God. That's what they're saying. Okay, picking up back here. What God demands is not labor in and of itself, but rational labor in a calling. In the Puritan concept of the calling, the emphasis is always placed on his methodical character of worldly asceticism, not as with Luther, with the acceptance of the lot which God has inherently assigned to man. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, emphasis right here on asceticism. You should not be, you don't show off your wealth. You don't spend frivolously. You should be ascetic. You should be humble. You should do your job well, treating it like it's a holy calling, but then you don't go off and spend frivolously. You save your money, but you do something specific with it, which comes to number 3. When the limitation of consumption, don't spend it, is combined with the release of acquisitive activity, work your butt off, the inevitable practical result is obvious: accumulation of capital. Okay, so let's make sure we understand. If all you do is work your butt off and you never spend your money on anything other than what you need, it is absolutely inevitable that you will accumulate capital. You will save money through ascetic compulsion to save. The restraints which were imposed upon the consumption of wealth naturally serve to increase it by making possible the productive investment of capital. Okay? So here's what it's saying. If you work your butt off and don't spend frivolously, you're going to make a lot of money. What are you going to do with that money? You should invest that money. Access the capital. Well, now, I already told you earlier, if you invest money, you're going to make money as a result. So Madison asks, were these jobs back then self-chosen and appointed, referring to the feeling of a calling? Yeah, for the most part they were. But we're going to come back to that. Good question. So, just in summary, you're productive, you make money, you don't spend that money, you invest it, as the scriptures tell us to do, we'll come back to that, and you'll accumulate wealth. Wealth is the inevitable result of a moral life. You see, what's really interesting about this is, whereas wealth before was the result of greed and avarice, now wealth is the result of a moral life. That's why we do business, because of religion. It's a calling and you're required to do it. That's a pretty nifty magic trick. Okay? Now, of course, there's acceptable and unacceptable ways of looking at wealth, right? So this is from the reading again. Unacceptable. Wealth is thus bad ethically only so far as it is a temptation to idleness and sinful enjoyment of life. And its acquisition is bad only when it is with the purpose of living merrily without care. Okay. It means, listen, wealth isn't bad unless the only reason you're working to gain wealth is so that you can be idle and lazy and basically live without a care. If all you're doing is developing wealth, gaining wealth for that kind of lifestyle, that's sinful. However, acceptable, but as a performance of duty in a calling. Remember that job that Madison just asked, can I choose my job? Yes, you can. Your job is a calling. But as a matter of performance and duty in a calling, it is not only morally permissible, but actually enjoined, meaning it's not only morally okay to get money, you're actually required to. The parable of the servant who was rejected because he did not increase the talent which was entrusted to him seemed to say so directly. So, just by way of reminder, or if it's new to you, the parable of the talent. Now remember, this is Calvinist, so we're talking about a Christian sect. The parable of the talent said there's this rich dude, and he's got 3 servants. And he gives all his servants, he gives one servant, 5 talents, and gives another servant. Let's just say that gives them all 1 talent, and a talent being like, $100, whatever. And the master gives his 3 servants this money, and he takes off. Well, he comes back and says, okay, what have you done with the money? And the first servant says, hey, man, I totally invested your money and I made bank with it. So here's not only the 1 talent you gave me, but here's 5 more in addition because I'm like a really good investor. And the master's like, dude, that's totally cool. I love it. He goes to the second servant, says, okay, what do you do with the talent I gave you? And he says, I totally invested it and I doubled it. I had 1, you gave me 1 talent. Here's 2, here you go. And he gets the same reward as the first guy. You still doubled it. That's not shabby. I'm fine. He goes to the third servant and says, okay, what do you do with the talent you gave me? And he says, well, holy crap. I was totally scared to death of investing it and losing it. So I just put it in a mattress. So here's your talent back. And the rich dude says, that's totally not cool. Okay. You should have invested that money so that I could then get gain from it. So what these Calvinists were saying is the scriptures require you to invest. Isn't this wild how religion is making business a requirement for entry to heaven? That blows my mind. Okay. Labor is a calling. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm so funny. What it just basically comes down to is that you should approach your job as though it's decreed from on high. Therefore, you don't slack. When God gives you a job, you don't slack. Won't worry about this one. This just from the reading, same thing, saying, it's assigned to you as a religious duty. Work is a religious duty. Okay. Now, influence of the Puritan attitude today. I maintain that the influence of the Puritan attitude is all over the place in this country today. And that's what that little Kahoot survey that freaking crashed my system showed us. Let me show you what I mean. Waste of time is the first and principle of deadliest sins. Loss of time through sociability, idle talk, luxury, or even more sleep than is necessary. Think about it. Absolute moral condemnation. Your parents, when you were younger, were always on you about video games. Maybe they still are all on you about video games. Um, and I get it. I do World of Warcraft. I do, Call of Duty, and you can get really sucked into those things, which is what that, depends on the day and circumstance that Nick was pointing out means. But, you know, society and parents and authority tend to look at things like time wasting as, video games and you're online all the time. Now, by the way, it's never changed. When I was a kid, it's like, or when your grandparents were kids, it was like turn off the radio. You're spending too much time on the radio. Then it was spending too much time on TV. Then it's spending too much time on the phone. Then it's spending too much time on computers. And it's spending too much time on social media, right? We're always spending too much time on something idle, but that idea in and of itself is part of this Protestant work ethic. Okay. Not going to worry about that one. Okay, remember when I asked, hey, do you have a, should everybody be required to work to earn their living? This is from the reading. To wish to be poor was, it was often argued, the same as wishing to be unhealthy. It is objectionable as a glorification of works and derogatory to the glory of God, especially begging on the part of one able to work is not only a sin of slothfulness, but a violation of the duty of brotherly love according to the apostle's own word. Now, this is a video here where they do some really interesting exploration in the panhandling. Not going to watch the video, but I will read, I'm going to recite something from it, and then I'm going to ask a question, okay? So check this out. This is from the video. This dude here, his name is Mike Adams. So Mike makes about $700 a week, working 2 to 3 hours a day panhandling, and he's been doing it for 20 years. So the interviewer, what do you do when people tell you, why don't you get a job? Mike, I've got a job. I'm a traveler. He travels all over the United States. So you consider this your job? Damn right. Do you want to do anything else? Hell no. What do you say? Would you say that you are a professional panhandler? Mike Adams says, I'm working on it. You've got to improve. You've got to do more. Mike says, yeah. Do you improve at your job? Interviewer, yeah. I improve at my job. So, here's what I want to ask. Can panhandling be considered work? If you say yes, tell me why you feel that it is considered work. If you answer no, tell me why you do not consider it work. By the way, both answers are correct. We're playing with the idea here. Okay? So let's play with this. Okay, let's explore this. So Madison says no, because they're gaining money dishonestly. Now, a couple things. first of all, it may be that they're being dishonest about what they're going to do with that money. But if they just kind of say, I'm going to use this money to eat and I'll probably get a drink and I'm going to travel, that's not dishonest. Furthermore, is honesty a requirement of something being called work? Because if so, then there are huge numbers of financial people and politicians and business people and so forth who have never worked a day of their life because they're not honest. So, kind of a question there. In the sense that it makes money, it is a sort of work. Yeah, I mean, it makes money. It is an activity, and they are involved in the activity, and people pay them for the service. Sounds like a definition of work to me. Brock, I'd say no, because you're not contributing your energy to something beneficial. It is not a good service provided. It benefits nobody but yourself and requires little effort. Okay, let's explore that. And by the way, on all of these, you're going to notice I'm going to take the opposite. That doesn't mean I disagree. It just means I'm taking the opposite. I can guarantee you it provides a service. I can promise it provides a service. The way I can guarantee that is that people pay voluntarily. Now, why do they pay? Any number of reasons. Maybe I'm feeling guilty. Maybe I'm feeling generous. Maybe somebody told me not to, and I don't like people telling me what I can and can't do, so I'm going to do it anyway. Maybe somebody has been there before. Who knows, right? But the mere fact that they make money when people can voluntarily choose to give or not give means that they are providing a service. It may not be a service you're interested in. It's definitely not a service that I know that many people are not interested in, but some people are. Furthermore, remember what Aristotle and Plato said about retail? The idea that you just arbitrage, buy something and then resell it without adding any value? Could be that this person adds more value than retail. Let's see. Let's explore this some more. Yes, they are making money. But just because something makes money doesn't mean it's work. Is that if you're doing something voluntarily and you're not making money, does that mean it's not work? No, you can work your ass off as a volunteer. It's work. So money is not the distinction of whether or not it's work. You see where this is going, right? He's making a living. No, because it is no effort and not stable. Okay, no effort, not stable. First of all, it's a hell of a lot of effort. It sucks and blows at the same time. Just so you know, been there, done it, got the t-shirt. You're welcome to read the slide. Not stable. Lots of work isn't stable. Okay? So is stability a differentiator? Theoretically, it can be considered work in the sense that he is taking time to panhandle and perfect his craft. However, I do not believe it is ethical work. Okay, guys, you're all right. Okay, don't think that I'm trying to say, oh, you're wrong. No, that's BS. You're all right. Here's the thing. It's what do we believe based on our Protestant work ethic? I would maintain that Kaylee is talking more about the Protestant work ethic because sure, it's work. Sure, it's hard work. Standing out in the sun. It sucks. I've been there. It's no good, right? Yes, you get money. And yeah, you could be totally honest or dishonest, whatever. But is it ethical? And the Protestant work ethic says, no, this is not an ethical way of making money. No, it's not their money. Well, what makes it their money, right? Think about, again, okay, I want to be really clear, Waleed. Every single time I disagree with somebody here, that doesn't mean I disagree. It's just exploring the idea. Is it your job? Is it your money? No, it's a contract. Any money we receive is as a result of a contract. I provide a good or service. You choose whether or not to accept that good or service. If you do accept it, you remunerate me with money. It's their money. No, because it's not effort of being made. My opinion is that most religious personnel are glorified panhandlers. Okay, so let's play with that one. All right, this is Nick. My opinion is that most religious personnel are glorified panhandlers. So, panhandler, we're looking at this and going, oh, it's dirty, it's gross. I mean, for example. And yet, do you know anybody who does GoFundMe? A GoFundMe page? Do you know anyone who has ever done a GoFundMe, or have you ever supported a GoFundMe? What is the difference between panhandling, which is dirty on the street with cardboard, versus GoFundMe, which is nice and clean and technologically awesome behind a computer? It's a similar act. And so, Nick, I don't necessarily disagree when you say that it can, personnel, anybody asking for money is a form of panhandling. By the way, I have a Patreon account for my nutshell brainery. Is that panhandling? I'd say street performing is a form of entertainment and thus a service. I'd say that it's a lot different from sitting there with the board asking for money. Yeah, it's a question of what is considered a service. When I was out there juggling in Europe, hitchhiking and panhandling in Europe as a performer, I'm sort of providing a service, right? But it's not a service that anybody asked for. And frankly, I wasn't all that great, so I starved. But yeah, okay. Here's my point. I maintain that a lot of the feelings we feel about these subjects, how much you work, panhandling, things like that, is a product of the Protestant work ethic. Okay? I'm going to skip this one because we are so low on time. We got to keep moving forward. And I apologize for that. I just really enjoy these topics. I'm not used to having to get through 4 in one go. Let's do a quick stretch. All right, I want to stand up, do a quick stretch, and then we will move on. And I'm not in a chair, I'm in a stool. So what's an abstract stool? No backrests. Whoever said a chair has a backrest, that kind of makes some sense. Okay. Now we're going on to the next phase. I'm going to fire through these very quickly. I will give you copies of this presentation so you can look at the readings more deeply and you can find them in the material, but I'll make sure I cover the key points. So here's the thing. Remember, we said we've now got 2 classes, right? We have people with capital who own capital, own the land. And we have people who used to be farmers and now are just on their own in terms of trying to make a living. Well, this brings up what the reading calls the naughtiest, meaning gnarly, most vexing of problems. Since the erection of and operating of the factories demanded 2 things, money, building, land, and so on and so forth, but it also required workers, England soon found herself with 2 major classes of society, the employer and the employed. Now we're getting to the Industrial Revolution. And so we've got all these landowners who own these factories. They need employees. Employees need the factories. Factories need the employees. So you would think there would be this nice coexistent, relationship, contract between the employers and the employees because each needs each other. You know as well as I do, that's not where this story is going. Okay? Now, this is where we start in this Industrial Revolution. We start to get the fourth of 5 principles of capitalism. The fourth of 5 principles of capitalism. The fourth one here is laissez-faire, which is French for leave it alone. Leave it alone. In economic theory, it basically says no regulation. Keep regulation out of the picture. So, from the reading here, according to this theory, economic adjustments follow certain natural laws which can be depended upon to work to the absolute advantage of humanity. And these laws should be allowed to function without interference. Oh my gosh, I love this paragraph because it says so much that we don't even appreciate what it's saying. It means that an economy follows natural laws. So, guys, this is insinuating that an economy is a natural state, a natural entity. Is it? Or is this something we've invented? Just saying. It is asserting that this is a natural state, just like nature, okay? Natural laws which can be depended upon. They don't just work sometimes or most of the time. You can depend on these natural laws to work for the absolute advantage of humanity. What hubris to say that. Absolute advantage of humanity. Okay? Meaning humanity will always be in the advantage. Humanity will always benefit if we just leave the natural world alone of economics. And these laws should be allowed to function without interference, meaning no regulation. Okay? So that's laissez-faire. That's the idea. Now, when I send out this PowerPoint presentation or a link to it, I really invite you, or go ahead and Google this later on. Google how wolves changed the rivers. This is a fascinating video about Yellowstone National Park and how the reintroduction of wolves into the park made the whole park healthier. And this is used as an argument for laissez-faire. The idea is, well, you have this beautiful, perfect natural system, and if you go in and try to regulate nature, it's only going to bite you in the butt. So what you need to do is just put the wolves back, leave everything alone, walk away, and let the natural system work. And if you let the natural system work, everything will benefit. So laissez-faire is very much saying, you see this example here? Let's do that in the economic system. Problem is, this is assuming that the economic system is a natural system. Now, it also, here, this is something to consider. This is from well, I'm not going to worry about this one. We got to move on. There's another thing to consider when it comes to this natural system. Nature is a son of a bitch. I mean, nature is cruel. Nature is harsh, right? I mean, when you watch documentaries and so forth, every once in a while you're like, oh my gosh, how can these animals do that? That's so awful. That's so horrible. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's cruel. And it's like, no, it's just nature. So the point I'm making is that if you choose to believe that the economy is a natural system that should not be regulated at all and just let it work the way it's intended to work for the absolute advantage of all of humanity, then you also need to accept that the crueler, harsher aspects of a natural system will be there, will be part of that solution. So you need to lay off people, you lay off people. People get hurt, people get hurt. You know, this economy falls, all that kind of stuff. Because nature unchecked is pretty cruel. So Brock asks, it would turn into survival of the fittest, would it not? Exactly. And that's what you hear about capitalism, Brock, all the time, is that the good companies should be allowed to succeed and flourish. And we're going to talk about that. Whereas if you're not a good company, if you're not providing a service or product that is, healthful and people enjoy and are willing to pay for and so forth, you're going to die. It's survival of the fittest. Well, okay. But here's the thing. Sometimes the things that are trying to survive are people. All right? How are they going to survive? So we're going to explore this. Here's the thing. Theory of evolution came along and said, you know what, people aren't so special after all. So we said we can, just kind of let the economy go as is. Not going to worry about that one. We need to keep moving. Okay, so we've got this. I'm sorry to just fire through this, but we're running out of time. But remember laissez-faire. Remember laissez-faire. Brock, but because there is regulation, the smaller businesses are allowed the opportunity to thrive or not. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think anybody believes in no regulation. If you believe in no regulation of any sort, you're an anarchist. Now, maybe you are an anarchist. That's a legitimate economic position to have. But we all believe in some sort of regulation. But we tend to believe in the regulation that benefits us versus the regulation that benefits somebody else. Okay, we need to, and we're going to go through this one and wrap it up for you. You're going to do a reading and then you're going to watch a video. There's a separate video called Meal Times about the Industrial Revolution. I'm just going to hit some key points here, okay? Here's the most important point, is this ultimately answered the question of how are we going to get people to do the crap jobs? Remember, we asked this about an hour ago. If it's not by custom because your last name is El Crapo, or Schiffbauer or Smith, and if I can't force you to do it, how am I going to get somebody to do the junk jobs? Well, go ahead and Google sometime how much a garbage collector makes in Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County garbage collector makes about $60,000 a year. The way you do it is by paying them. And this is enlightened self-interest. Here's the principle. The prevailing tendency of thought in economic teaches that the period were not merely negative and opposed to government regulation. They contained a positive element as well. If there was to be no external control, no regulation, laissez-faire, hands off, what incentive would actuate men in their industrial existence? Why would somebody work? What force would hold economic society together? The answer was a plain one. Enlightened self-interest was the incentive. Universal free competition was the force. Here's the idea. In other words, a natural and sufficient economic force was always tending to act and produce the best results. Absolute advantage of everyone, except as far as was interfered by external regulation. Don't regulate, just let the system do what it does. If a man wishes to earn wages to receive payment, he must observe what work another man wants done, or what goods another man desires, and offer and do that work or furnish those goods so the other man may be willing to remunerate him. If you want to make money, find out what somebody wants done, do it, and make the money. In this way, both obtain what they want, and if all the others are similarly occupied, all wants will be satisfied as far as is practicable. But men must be entirely free to act as they think best, to choose and what and how they will produce. The best result will be obtained when the greatest freedom exists, when men may compete with one another, freed from all trammels, regulations, at liberty to pay as much as, ask for such wages, to demand or offer such prices, to accept or reject such goods as they wish or can agree with. If everybody else is equally free, the man who offers the best to his neighbor will be preferred. This is the whole idea of enlightened self-interest and laissez-faire. If you are allowed to do anything you want and meet whatever needs are out there, you will, just by sheer nature, produce the best, most affordable goods you can so that you can compete with others. Nick, minimum wage in Chile is $1 an hour. We're going to talk about that because, yeah, minimum wage is regulation. This is a way of industry saying, of government telling industry how much they're required to pay. But industry will come right back and say, let the market decide what to pay. For example, here in Utah, up before this pandemic, McDonald's, I have a good friend who owns a whole bunch of McDonald's franchises. He was starting employees out at $10 or $11 an hour. Well, the minimum wage is $7.25. You can't pay anybody $7.25 in that economy and stay in business. That's where the market responds. Okay? But it doesn't always work. All right. We're not going to worry about that. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to take you here. And this is what we're going to wrap up on. You're going to watch this video mill times. Here's the thing. It's about a 45-minute video, I think. So build in some time to watch it. Keep your ear open for the following things. And I will be including this presentation when I post this video. Okay? They're going to talk about things like damming the river to control its flow, innovation, politics, boycotting, competition, long-term investment, regulation. Listen for those things. You're going to hear them talked about a great deal. You also want to pay attention to the working conditions of the Lowell women. This is where we're starting to see some questions of working conditions come into play. And then finally, you want to look at how we are blocking free trade and why we block free trade. So everybody loves free trade when it benefits us, but we hate free trade when it doesn't benefit us. This is our first example of this. And with that, guys, holy hell, you did it again. You suffered through another, for all intents and purposes, 2-hour lecture. Oh my gosh, right? And either you're doing that here in person or you're watching it after I've posted it. Regardless, good work. So what I'm going to do now is, we're done. You're good. Congratulations. Good work. I'm going to stay on, though, and see if there are any questions. If you have any questions, comments, want to explore any ideas, let me know. I just want to make sure that you feel like you are totally prepared to be successful this week. So if there's anything that you feel like you're ill prepared for this week, let me know and let's cover it. Otherwise, you're all good, guys. Good job. So let's see what we have got. Any questions? Okay, back to Puritan times. Did people choose their job? Yeah, they chose their job. Now, of course, all jobs are constrained. You like to think you can do anything in this world. You can be anything you want to be. All you have to do is have passion and put your mind to it. No, it's whatever the market requires. Okay. There may not have been much demand for yoga instructors back in the Puritan days. So no, you had to choose a job that was required, or needed by the community. But yeah, you got to choose it. Do you agree with any specific religious ideology? I so I here let me I love I guess I shared this, right? I love studying theology and world religion. If you look around here, I have some these are Hindu statues. I have Buddha. I have Muslim and Islamic. And back over here, I have some other um, uh, statues and so on and so forth. I love studying theology. Um, do I agree with a religious ideology? Here's the thing: most are pretty darn similar. I know you don't read about that, right? You don't study all the ways that religions are the same. We only study ways that religions are different so that we can justify our desire to kill one another. But if you let go of the need to kill people, and it's a nice thing to let go of, you start to realize that we really believe all the same thing. It's just a different language, a different set of symbols, a different set of mythologies, a different set of stories. And I find those fascinating. All right. Any other questions, folks? All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up. We're all done. We're all good. Congratulations. But I'm going to stay online for a bit and answer any questions that come in. And otherwise, thank you very much for hanging with me during this lecture. And we'll talk to you again next week, if not sooner. Let me know if you want to chat. We'll see you later.